welcome to the show. I'm Kim Parley. Great to have you with us tonight. Canadian softwood lumber, dairy, a border adjustment tax, pulling out of the North American Free Trade Agreement. We've been hearing a lot of tough talk from our longtime and most important trading partner, the United States. So just what in the world is happening to trade relations with our neighbor, and could there be serious implications for Canada? Here to dissect it and give us some insight, as always, Chuck Gastle. He's a trade lawyer and litigator at Bennett Gastle Professional Corporation. Nice to see you again, I think. It's always nice to see you, but when you're here, things are going on. So
it's Christmas every day for trade lawyers.
It's Christmas every day. So, okay, are you? So let's just for the last when you were here before, we talked about the things that were potentially on the table, and really undoing NAFTA could be, I don't want to overplay it, but could be a bit of a catastrophe for Canada if it got unwound. Are you surprised at where we are today, given the talk that we had not too long ago?
In many respects, I'm more reassured today than I was then, simply because. In certain respects, Trump seems to be falling into more traditional patterns. There are some things, though, that I think are very concerning that have come up since then.
Like what?
Well, the first thing is he basically is he's taking a position in international trade which could basically undermine the WTO and basically end its effectiveness. That's very scary.
And how? Sorry, expand on that a bit. What do you mean?
Well, basically, what he said in a trade position that was provided to Congress is that if he doesn't like a decision that the World Trade Organization makes, he just won't enforce it, and he won't abide by it. And the most important aspect of the World Trade Organization is its dispute settlement mechanism. And if it loses credibility, then the entire organization loses credibility, and that's really bad for world trade and for developing nations in particular.
Let me ask you, how much, when he says that, and I don't doubt that he did say that, I mean, given his track record, is this just, again, a blustery negotiation tactic, or do you think this is something that could actually come to pass?
Who knows?
Yeah.
I would hope not. I would hope that cooler heads would prevail and this is all posturing. But with many things with Donald Trump, we won't know until we see it. A lot of this is still speculation even today. I mean, we still don't know what's coming down the pipe.
What should we be watching then? Because I mean, you and I chatted before the show started, and softwood has reared its head again. But this is not. This is something that, from a timing standpoint, from my understanding, was bound to come up soon anyway. This was it was ready to come up. Dairy has been, I'd say, an irritant for a while. So are either those kind of material in terms of, and I'm not to those industries, they're very material, but to the broader trade agreements between Canada and the U.S.?
Okay. A lot of what is coming up was on the trade agenda in any event. It doesn't represent a change. It may represent a degree of intensity. We may see an attack on dairy that we haven't seen in the past. We may see the art of the deal come in, and Trump either says my way or the highway. So is it possible that our supply management side policies are at risk? Yes, it is. It's possible, but we'll have to wait and see. But a lot of these things, again, have always been there for a long period of time, softwood lumber since 1982. But there are some things that are worrisome. So
what are the things that are coming up now that are perhaps being tabled that haven't been tabled before?
Well, the first thing is that Donald Trump has just in the past 2 weeks signaled that he is going to do an investigation of aluminum on the basis of national security. And what he's saying is that the United States has to be able to arm up quickly. And there are certain industries that are important to doing that. Shipbuilding, aircraft, vehicles.
So back up, arm up quickly for defense?
Exactly. And so what he's saying is we have to be able to keep our industries intact in order that we can arm up quickly if we have to. And so therefore, trade is not just trade anymore. It's not just economics. It's a question of national security. Now, the reason why that's important is because the WTO from the get-go, from day one, has always the national security has been an exemption. It basically takes you out of the WTO framework. And there's a real issue as to what ability the World Trade Organization has to investigate claims of national security.
So he's found a loophole.
He's found a loophole that's rarely been used. I'll give you an example of when it was used. When Canada was imposing restrictions on Kosovo and in that area, that was one time that the exemption was used. And what he can do is if he does that, he could blow the WTO, a big hole in the WTO. Other people will start using it, and again, all of a sudden, a rules-based system will erode, and we'll have this other route that he's going to. But who knows how serious he is on doing that? And
anecdotally, I mean, aluminum is one thing that
yes.
he said. Is there any other industries he's targeted that saying could be part of this defense argument?
Aluminum is the one that's being studied.
Yeah.
But the other industries are steel, vehicles, aircraft, shipbuilding, and there's one more.
Energy?
Semi-conductors.
Oh, semis?
Semi-conductors is the other.
Huh.
So that's something that's new.
So fast forward, let's say, and I mean, I know you can't read the future, but a year from now, you and I are sitting having this conversation. If things go well, what are we talking about? If things go badly, what are we talking about?
My expectation is that there's a lot more bluster here. I think there will be a NAFTA. I think NAFTA will be renegotiated. I think Canada will have to give up certain things, but I don't think it's going to be a radical departure from the agreement we have now. Some areas there will be substantial change, but we'll still have a NAFTA. And that's really important to Canada. There's no question about it. On the other things, I just don't know. I don't know how to predict it. I mean, if he were to go, my biggest fear is that the World Trade Organization is discredited. And
that is far-reaching implications.
And it does. But if it is, that makes NAFTA even more important. Because if the World Trade System begins to weaken, it's more important that we maintain our relationship with the one country where 75% of our exports go and 2/3 of our imports come from.
All right, I'm here with Chuck Gastle. He's a trade lawyer and litigator with Bennett Gastle Professional Corporation. We're talking about trade with the United States, given all the interesting things that are going on right now in terms of pending negotiations. You talked about the security loophole. I'm calling it loophole that could happen with the WTO. Fascinating. But I want to shift a little bit and talk about what we're hearing in Canada. So one thing that I've heard from people, and I think it's been reported on, which I think is alarming, is that for companies that are in Canada, these are Canadian companies, given the choice of where they're going to build right now, Canada or the States, they've already shifted their investment to the States because it's just like no matter what happens, they just know they're safe there. That's a real danger, is it not?
Sure it is. It's uncertainty at the border. Anytime there's uncertainty at the border, the decision will be made, or will likely be made, that the investment will go stateside, and there are factors that lead to that uncertainty.
Now import tax?
Yeah, this is a big one. This is a surprise. This is where he departs from everyone else. They are, from what The Economist says, that's my source on this. What they're planning on doing is they're planning on taxing imports and subsidizing exports. Mm-hmm. And it's the way they actually calculate net income. So it's not a tariff at the border, which is a traditional way of doing it.
Is this the border adjustment tax or a version of, or
you
not?
You can call it a border adjustment tax, but what it really is they're going to tax imports one way, and they're going to tax exports in another way, and it's going to represent a penalty on imports and a subsidy to exports, and it's GATT illegal. Because it's a national treatment. You have to treat both products exactly the same. It doesn't matter where it comes from. But this will be WTO illegal, and then the question is, if a decision is made, will President Trump respect it?
Right, and if he doesn't, then when you've got one of the strongest players at the table not respecting it, makes the organization impotent, quite frankly.
Now that's one point. Another point is that President Trump is trying to reduce the corporate rate to about 15%. And in the Financial Post a couple days ago, there was an indication that the current Canadian corporate rate is about 27%, and that when you factor in the state tax, it'll be 20%. And so all of a sudden, when it used to be there was a taxation benefit in Canada, that will be reversed. That'll be another thing that will drive investment south. And the third is that as long as we have negotiations over NAFTA, there's an uncertainty there.
Yeah.
And so it'll drive it south.
What about, some would make the argument, and I'm going to take energy as an example. We have a pending pipeline, Keystone, in terms of the States. And, it's had its difficulties and it's undergoing its own kind of negotiations at the same time. Some saying, you know what, forget it. Let's send the pipeline east. Let's send the pipelines west and bolster our trade with China and really get that going. Is that viable from your trade perspective?
Yeah, and let's increase our trade with Greenland, Iceland, and let's go over the North Pole. Sure, you can talk about that. But diversification has been a chimera for 40 years, 50 years.
Yeah.
It's Pierre Elliott Trudeau in the 70s had a whole policy based on diversion. It didn't work. Our dependence on the United States went up. In the 1980s, in about 10, 15 years ago, 80% of our exports went to the United States. It's come down a bit. Now it's 75%. How much of that is energy? But the fact is that, and pardon the pun, but geography trumps.
Yeah.
And we can go to China and we can build at the margins. We can go to Europe and we can build at the margins. But the fact is since the first treaty agreement with the United States in the 1860s, our trade is north-south.
So let me ask you this then. If you have, if you were at the table, if you are the one kind of trying to figure out the strategy to engage with the U.S. government right now, what would you be focused on?
Saying yes.
Yeah.
I would be focused on keeping a trade agreement with the United States. And I know how important softwood is, and I know how important dairy is, but the truth is, there's always a cost of doing business with the United States. And things like anti-dumping and countervailing duties, that's the price of doing business with the United States. And Canada's going to have to pay a price, and we're going to have to do it. Now, will the politicians in Canada be able to withstand the political pressure and calculus inside Canada? My understanding of dairy, and this is based on studies that I probably did 15, 20 years ago. That's how long this has been out there. But the point is that apparently there'll be a real cost, a political cost in Quebec if dairy quotas are given up.
Yeah, so there will be a political cost. Always fascinating, Chuck. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
Chuck Gastle, he's a trade lawyer and litigator with Bennett Gastle Professional Corporation, and he joined me in studio.